Good evening, everyone. I hope you are all having wonderful beginnings to your week. Before we jump into collectively rewilding, I just wanted to show you a little bit about what I'm doing with the Gardenary certification. It's just wonderful. I'm already on the 26th page of the workbook, and there are just these wonderful exercises. Let me see if I can get it in the screen here without messing my camera up. So what this is a arc of the seasons of your area. Okay, so let me show you her examples. This is Houston. So this is probably relatively comparable for you, Miss Ethel, and probably not too far off for you, Kindez, or for you, Vanessa, right? Okay, so Houston here. And what she's done is she has January through December, and then, oh, a little bit better positioning. There we go. Okay. So this right here is the first mark in January, and it shows that it's a cold season. She says don't confuse people with the growing zones because you can be in the same growing zone as another area and have completely different types of results. So it's a very, very broad guideline. And so instead, she says to take this arc of the seasons and start with your cold period, if you have a cold period. For people in where she's at now, Nashville, possibly for some years for Ethel, from what our conversations have been over the years, maybe for Kindez and Vanessa, they don't really have a cold season where, there's frozen ground and maybe snow on the ground and all of these kinds of things. That's your actual cold season. And so for Houston, which is warmer than some areas, but not as warm as Nashville, for her two examples, there's a cold season that begins at January 1st and goes through about the middle of February. Then it enters into a cool period around the middle of March. So this is like a variance, right? Like when you say plus or minus three points, that's kind of like that little variance. It could be a little bit colder, or it could start with the cool season a little bit earlier. And the last frost, which is when the beginning or with the end of the cool season, how shall I say this? You can still continue with some cool weather plants, but you definitely won't want to put in any more cool weather seeds at the end of your last frost date. So it's kind of like the end of your cool weather period. And so her cool weather period in Houston began about the middle of March, and her last frost date was in the middle of May. And then there's that little variance again. And she's saying that the warm period for Houston is about, it looks like June 1st, and it goes to about the middle of August. And then there's that variance, and her cool season begins again in the beginning of September. Her first frost is about the middle of October, a little bit earlier than that. And the cool period ends at about the end of November, and your cold period the cool period ends about the middle of November, and the cold period begins at about the middle of the December period. So then you walk back through and you begin again. Now for Houston or for Nashville, she doesn't have a cold period. So her cool period begins on January 1st and goes to her final frost at the middle of February. Then it is her warm period from about the beginning of March through the middle of May. And then it's got that variance there. The middle of June now begins her hot period, right? So Houston didn't have a hot period, which really surprises me, but perhaps that's true.
Can I ask a question, Sabrina? Sorry to interrupt.
No, do. I would love it.
Is Houston, Texas?
That's what I thought too, right?
That's
really quite a while, and so the temperatures may have changed on her.
Because that's way south in Texas. It was
hot when we were there, and that was 20 plus years ago. So
that's way south, and I would think that's the growing season there would be like it is down in Georgia and Florida and stuff. That's would be my thought.
Too, right? Except that it's drier, right? Drier.
No. It's very humid.
Houston is? Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So West Texas is dry, and Houston must then be over more towards the east or southern side.
No, it's clear down in the tip of Texas. It's clear down on the
Wow.
coast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's I
So that's
that's
weird. Maybe
really
she's doing it more for illustrative purposes. I don't know. I would have to agree with you, right? So
okay. Sorry to interrupt.
no, it's a very accurate interjection. Okay. So her Nashville period though is going to go all the way into that hot, right? And then ends at about the middle of August. Again, there's that little variance. The warm period begins again in the middle of September or beginning of September. And then she has a lot of variance here. So her warm period actually goes to the end of November, but she also has the cool period beginning in the middle of November. No real variance here. It's all at the same moment. And that's because you want to make sure to get those cool weather plants in early enough so that they don't hit the first frost date. And I wonder if she hasn't updated this in a while or looked at it, because really you should bring those plants, you should have started those maybe even in the end of July to get that, depending on your location. So always there's, work that can be improved, but I love the overall idea. And this is actually going to take all 15 of my little tabbies over here, and it's really neat. And this is what would interest you, Kindez. The contents here, when we go through all the garden stuff, then we're going to get into the business setup, the business timeline, the consultant products, not so much for you, and then get garden consultant finances, the garden consultant marketing, and garden consultant sales. So it's this whole, it's not just a gardening certification. It's an entire business model. It's really amazing. And she did mention, I know I mentioned it to you guys last week, and as I'm watching her modules, she mentioned that people do sign up for her course that don't have any interest in using the garden aspects of it, but her business setup is so clear and concise and relevant that they buy it just as the business element. So we'll definitely walk through a lot of this together because it has so much relevance for so many of us, right? And not just as a gardening style or that kind of ideology, but as an overall guideline for what some of us are trying to do beyond just our gardening. So lots of fun as far as that. And when I'm working online, so now let's go ahead and share the screen. When I'm working online with her material, there are these really nice course modules. And of course, this is something that's very comparable to what we experience in Collectively Rewilding and in Lesko Help too. And this is an entire module. I'm sure it's quite important. It has its own section in the workbook. So this little module probably supports what's in the actual documentation for the workbook, is what I'm guessing. The last one had 4. And then if you go into the overall system, this is the one course that I'm working on. And it came with all of these courses. And in each one of these courses, there might be 100 different lessons in the overall modules. And I'm guessing that most of them, if not all of them, come with a comparable workbook. So this is really going to work alongside everything I'm doing with Julia May to make our community as presentable and professional and useful and user-friendly as possible, to increase everything that I'm putting into our garden planner. Oh, and did you have a question, Mom, or?
Well, I'm sorry.
You're good. She's on her phone, guys, so it's so easy to push those buttons if you're moving around much at all. It's totally not something to apologize for. All right, but it's really going to work alongside. She has the same philosophy that what we're doing is building on here in Collectively Rewilding in that gardening planner, working by the months and by the seasons, right? When you're planning in prep, spring awakening, summer flourishing, and fall foundation goes marvelously with this arc of the seasons. And I absolutely agree with her when we're talking to people if we're working with people on it, certainly if we're learning for ourselves, not worrying as much about just the growing zones or the first and last frost date, but looking at the overall arc of our seasons when we remain in the same location year after year, right? Of course, I've been moving so much that I haven't been able to say that for very much of my life, but I've gotten all these different perspectives throughout all the different places that I've lived in as well. So give and take with anything. And once now that I'm settled, I get to participate in that a little bit more as well. It's something that I've always been highly tuned to. I've always been a very nature happy person. I just love being in nature. I love thinking about nature. I love interacting with nature. I love animals. I love plants. As I've grown, that's more completely incorporated things like the soil and the air and the water. They were always like an ephemeral thing that was a part of all that I loved, but it's become more real, more concrete as I've aged, how important the health of our soil is, and how what we do with our soil impacts our water, and of course then impacts our air, because the air uptakes that water and then brings it down. And so it's just this continuous cycle, and it's something that I've always loved. And that's more what she's focusing on in Gardenery, is that cycle. And so it's going to be really neat to actually get to work with it in a place that I know I'm actually going to be in for at least 5 years, right? And so this is going to be a lot of fun, guys. I'm really excited to bring you along with this whole process appropriately, not exclusively, not too much, but throughout the whole process. And so before we move on, are there any other questions? And please, you guys, like Anita did, if you have a question about what we're talking about, please go ahead and interject, and let us know your question, because we don't want you to forget about it. And we also want it to be right there with that relevant material, so that anybody else is like, oh yeah, that is a good question, you know, they can work with that all together at that time. So that's really great. No questions? Everybody's following along, happy with where we're at? All right. So I haven't had as much time to work in the garden planner, because I've been working with this, and I've also been really focused on making sure that, so politically incorrect, the urea station is all set up and functioning. My family is minimally participating. It's primarily my effort, which is not unfair, but I wouldn't mind if I had a little bit more material to work with. Let's just be as opaque as possible with our conversation. And so that's actually taken up a decent little bit of my time. We wanted to move it into the garage when our cool season ends and it's too cold for the urea to continue that process to actually become urea, right? So it's urine and then it becomes urea, or it becomes ammonia, as we talked about last week. And we wanted to move that into the garage as it's too cold for that process to continue. It won't be able to fully continue. We won't be able to count those months as full months. We're going to count them as half months, because it still gets cold in the garage, but we're going to turn our little super powered space heater on at night to keep some warmth in there. And we're also going to look at investing in rolling like wardrobe hangers, and just hang some cold deterrent curtains. I can't think of the proper term right now, but those really heavy duty curtains that keep out heat and keep out cold, and actually kind of making a room around it up against the wall where we have it. And we took our piano where it was up against the wall, so it wasn't as cold or hot for it, and brought it down into our little bitty hallway down here downstairs. But it's going to be neat, because my husband just loves messing around with musical instruments, and we're going to add some curtains that will make the sound better here in the office, and that will also make it almost like a little studio for him over there. So everything has its cycles, and in finding something that worked for the garden, we made something better for the house, and we also cleaned up the garage a little bit more. So lots always going on with all of that. Miss Julia has been pretty busy, so unfortunately it doesn't look like she's had a chance to get in and work on any of our cards, so we won't be moving forward with any of that quite yet. I'm busy reading a book called Permission Marketing that goes along with that Story Brand book, and it's all about how to talk with people so that as a business, you're more like that old time store clerk that really got to know their customers, and they could just sit and kind of tell big yarns and tall tales to you, right? Yarn Yard for Tall Tales. Got to plug it a little bit. And they would just really know what their customers needed. And they could say, oh, hey, this new shipment just came in. We've got your favorite kind of candy. We've got the new goodies book, you know, whatever individual customers were interested in. And that's what permission marketing is all about. Getting permission from your customers, your clients, your members, your patients, your travelers, whatever the case may be, and asking for permission to include them in different things. So what Collectively Rewilding is as a platform, you have to input your email address in order to create an account, right? You can come in and you can look around because we're public and we're free. You can come in and you can look around without leaving an email address. But if you would like to start participating with anything, you have to create an account, which includes an email address. And in that permission that a member gives, they are understanding that you will be reaching out to them. And so that's what the automatic notifications are that we all deal with, love them, hate them, whatever the case may be, from both Collectively Rewilding, Lesko Help Too, and I also have them going on in Quimby and in Mighty Networks, Mighty Community. So lots of notifications. There's also an additional permission built into those accounts that you can do relevant email outreach. And so that's one of the things that we've talked about, where we're going to invite all of the people who are members here with us in Collectively Rewilding, but who don't participate with us as much, at least that we're aware of. They're probably in sometimes looking at the material and things. We had a woman by the name of Karen vote on our poll, and it's pinned here. If you haven't had a chance, Tammy would like us to have a member chat area. That'll be her fun zone, right? Beyond her area that she already has. And we've put some names out for you to vote upon, but only 4 of us have voted, guys. So definitely get in there and get your vote heard. And a lady that we've never gotten the chance to work with here in our lives voted. And that really made me happy. And so I know that there are people that are looking that aren't participating. And so we're going to invite all of those people. Please, Candace.
Well, where's the vote at?
If you look in the featured section here, it'll be there right towards the top. Let's see, right here. It's official. We need your help. Our new community chat space needs the perfect name, and we've got some great options. They are really cute, I think. And of course, if you have a better one, we'd love to hear that. And that's also built into it. Let me just tag you, Candace. There you are. And that'll bump it to the top of the feed as well. So if you guys jump into what's new today, at the top somewhere will be that poll. Really cute little names for the chat that Tammy will probably have lots of fun interactions for you all to play with. You might know that I'm not as big of a chat person, so that'll probably be primarily her arena, but people really do enjoy the chat. And it doesn't work very well in Lesko Help Too, but here in Collectively Rewilding, it'll work very well. It'll work unless we start getting a lot of members that are asking questions about things that they need to be able to access, right? That was the problem with Lesko Help Too. They're asking questions and getting answers, and then it's very cumbersome to try to find those answers. So if people start asking for real questions in the chat, we'll either have to try to create a culture where we move them towards a different area or turn off the chat. But hopefully it'll work out a little bit better, I think, here. So we're going to give it a good shot and try it out. Because as Tammy said, sometimes members that won't participate anywhere else will participate in the chat, and that is very accurate. So she is very in tune with how communities work as a community, as an organism. And I love getting all of that kind of feedback and support and suggestions from you guys. So always feel free to share that kind of information if you have requests like that, or something you're like, oh my gosh, quit changing names on us, or whatever the case may be, right? So, all right. That's a lot of what we have going on here as Collectively Rewilding. We're seeing some grass come back, which is so wonderful in the front yard. And I believe that's I don't know how many of you were here when we read the heat wave article on Yarn Yard for Tall Tales a couple of weeks ago, maybe even 3 weeks ago. And I learned at least, that it's not a good idea to fertilize your plants during the heat waves. I had thought that that would be a good thing, get them. When I'm hot, after I'm like cooled down a little bit, I want to eat. So, I need that food. But plants, of course, are not people, though we may love them almost like people sometimes. They need different kinds of help and participation. So even though it wasn't necessarily very productive that I was putting it out during some of the hotter times, I did put some out a little bit before the heat wave began. That nutrient content is still there in the ground. And so the grass is starting to come back on the front yard, which is a huge success. It's shoddy and it's sparse, and it will be an effort continuing ongoing, but it's definitely already helping. Unfortunately, the 2 trees that we wanted to keep out front, the white spruce and I think it's a Chinese red maple. It's a maple anyway. Just a gorgeous tree, really gorgeous tree. We wanted to keep it at least for a little while. We definitely wanted to just keep the spruce, but the maple, unfortunately, it drips sap through all of the growing season and a little bit beyond and a little bit before. So 2/3 of our driveway is unusable because of this sap problem. So we were probably eventually going to have to cut down this gorgeous tree, and it just breaks our hearts even more than the aspen and birch stand, because if it were in a better location, more to the middle of the yard, it would be a fantastic tree and we could just leave it alone and let it be glorious and beautiful. However, I'm not sure, and it's probably a combination with us removing that huge line that was a true stand of aspen and birch in the front yard, and those roots just being so interwoven throughout the whole yard. I'm not sure if it's because some of those roots are dying or because they're making such a big push now to try to keep from dying, and they keep sending up these saplings, or both, as well as also the fact that trees, they create this biome. Without your tallest plants, you never have a true canopy, a true environment, a true biodome, full diversity, any of these things. And they really interact with everything else around them. And their roots send out chemicals, and sometimes forests keep trees that are that have fallen naturally or they've been felled, cut down. They will keep the stump alive because the roots are so important to the overall structure of the forest. And so with all of that combined with the lack of nutrients and this pretty decent heat wave that we went through, is actually shorter and not as hot as it is some years, but still it is a heat wave nonetheless. With that whole combination, the spruce is almost completely dead, I don't think. And I've been putting the fertilizer on it pretty heavily now that the heat wave is gone. I'm afraid that the root interaction that it had is the biggest problem. And then the fact that it's been struggling with nutrients since they started overwatering the property last year, or who knows how long, it's too much for it and it's going to die. And the maple wouldn't die, but it's showing damage. The leaves are all browning in almost a wave pattern around each one of the leaves. I mean, you don't see the leaves without seeing that browning really out there. And that's a little sad to know that choices made by others are going to destroy at least one tree that we were just wanting to keep. And the decision to place the tree where they did in the first place, if you're planting trees, not only should you always take account in the diameter, which this tree wasn't too badly placed as far as its overall diameter. It does have to be maintained a little bit right up next to the root structure, but not a huge amount. They should have gone out, maybe 3 or 4 more feet and in. That's the real thing. If you're going to have a tree that drips sap, you don't want it to be over anything that you don't want that sap on. So when we're placing trees above and beyond all things in our landscape, in our properties, in our gardens, in our yards, we want to understand that tree quite well. We want to know, does it drip sap? We want to know, does it make a large mess? For myself, if that mess is useful, like a cherry tree or a peach tree or an olive tree, I'm not worried about it being messy. For some people, that's a real problem. And I may not be able to convince the city to let me put peach trees to replace these trees that they themselves want to replace. They pick these fast growing kind of yucky trees. They're technically Bartlett pears, but they are non-productive Bartlett pears that grow insanely quickly. So the wood is very weak, and they didn't do their research well, and they're pollinated by flies. Idaho has some of the same problem. I had heard that Utah did it. Don't know if Tooele just decided to do this. I haven't had fruit trees that I could go up and smell on any of the properties that I rented to, test it. It was supposed to be better in Salt Lake Valley though. So maybe Tooele went Idaho about it. I'm not sure, but they've planted these kind of stinky, weak, problematic trees, and they do want to replace them, but I don't know if they'll let me replace them with peach trees because, yes, they are considered a messy tree. They're going to drop the fruit that you don't pick or that don't get eaten by the bugs, the birds, and the beasts, right? So I may not be able to do that, but cross my fingers, we'll be able to. We're going to just probably end up cutting down the spruce any day now. I mean, there's hardly any life left to it. There's a few branches that have some life left on the tips, and it's not going to make it. And then there's a little dwarf non-productive plum tree that should never have been placed where it was. It was surrounded by trees. The poor little thing has just struggled its entire life, and we always intended to cut that one down. And we may go ahead and cut the maple down as well because it's struggling and it does need to get removed so that my husband can park his car and we can park our extra car for the girls up actually on the driveway instead of on the street. When we have a parking driveway that could host probably 4 or 5 cars relatively easily, we only have 3 and we have 2 of them on the street because of this tree. It's really sad to have to correct some of the errors that people make sometimes. And so when we have the choices ourselves, we want to make better choices, right? All right, guys. Anything you want to share about your gardens? Anything that you have going on? Any questions at all? I can definitely tear into more material. I mean, we could start going and looking at that gardening planner and getting ready for the January release of that, because there's a lot to get ready for. Yes, Kendez, please.
So was the thing you was going over at the beginning of the class, was that like a garden planner as far as like what to plant at what time and what season and what temperature?
It is. It is that as the backbone of what your overall business is doing. That's your overall gardening philosophy, is that you are working with the seasons and that you can keep your business going even into the coldest steps of winter if you live in Minnesota or Michigan or one of these really cold states, right? I'm not sure actually if Minnesota is cold. That cold. Michigan is very cold. I believe, don't quote me on this, that it has a spot that can be the coldest spot on the globe at certain points of the year, just like in California in Needles, that can also have the hottest spot on the globe at certain points of the year.
Wow.
Yes. So even in those areas, though, you can find a way to help your clients touch the soil, touch the plants, eat the plants that they grow, and work with those seasons and work with that cycle. Yeah, it's really neat. It's really going to be fun. And Tammy tried to encourage me to watch it along with you guys in an unrecorded session, but I just don't think that's fair. This woman has done a tremendous amount of work to make this such a valuable resource, and I will absolutely bring you guys along with it. But I really feel like if somebody wants to work her system, they should go ahead and go get her system. $3,000 for an entire business plan alongside the overall plan to be a garden consultant and so much more is worth $3,000 to me, right? Like that's a very reasonable charge. So I'm going to support her very much, and I believe that she's going to make it so that I can do everything that I want to do, which will in turn end up making Collectively Rewilding what I've always hoped it would become, because it's going to provide the income that's going to allow me to move forward on so many different levels, which will naturally end up bringing in more content creators and allow for enough money that if we outgrow the overall setup that Mighty Networks is, because we have so many content creators, that we will be able to pay someone to create something that is somewhat comparable to this, to slowly migrate over to bring everybody along with us while we continue to maintain this spot. It's all a great big plan, and it previously was all dependent on making this for-profit, nonprofit plan that collectively rewilding is fulfill all these goals. And it was always just like if you're a fabulous guitar player, you're an amazing writer, you have amazing acting skills. It's still to some degree a crapshoot on luck unless you have enough money to push it until people respect what a valuable tool it is, right? So there's definitely things you can do to improve your odds, but to become as big as what I would like for this to become was always a bit of a gamble. No matter how good I make it, no matter how hard I try, no matter how much of my little money that I can put into it, this is going to provide the money that's going to allow me to do things like upgrade my equipment to better show you guys what I'm doing if we wanted to have a sewing circle again, when I'm working out in the garden, paying people to even go so far as to record us at points, right? I don't want to just always depend on making my now adult daughter come out and film for me without compensation at least, right? So it's going to allow for a lot of different things that what Collectively Rewilding's promise shows, but I can't guarantee that with the amount that I can fund it and the amount that I can personally put into it while I have this 50-hour-a-week plus paycheck job would manage to accrue the success that I believe it deserves. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I can't. I might quite possibly pull that off that way. This is going to give me the tools to be able to almost guarantee that it's going to have a much better success, if maybe not the big picture vision I have, but a much more dependable, consistent presence and success because of everything that this business opportunity is going to provide to me and to whatever I can grow. So it's pretty neat.
Were you talking about the blackout curtains?
There are blackout curtains, but there's some other term, and I can't think. It's like heat resistant or thermodynamic, something like that. Yeah, and it's meant to both block the cold and the heat, depending on the season that it is. And they also probably would have the effect of pretty comparable to what actual blackout curtains are, where that's their purpose, right? They're pretty comparable, but these will, for in the garage, it'll be about keeping in the heat. And then for down here, they're actually curtains that work specifically to help eliminate noise, right? So you can do a lot of things on a limited budget, in a limited space, when you think outside of the box a little bit, right? All right, so what do you guys think? Should we bug Kendez about his cucumbers? Should we jump into the gardening planner? What do you guys, oh, we could talk about what's going to happen this Wednesday. That's going to be fun. I have like totally planned out a bunch of different lessons for us already. I think it might be this one. Let's just take a pic. Nope, that's all of our calendars. I just set up some new stuff with my tabs and I haven't learned my system yet. Okay, so it's the third one from the last. So one of the main things that we're going to start off with in our how-tos for community outreach, and why it also has to be earlier in the day. So let me just remind you guys, because that's pretty early for our calendar. So this coming Wednesday, and we'll go over it again once real quick at the end, is going to be at 1:45 Pacific PM, of course, 2:45 PM Mountain, 3:45 Central, and 4:45 Eastern. And there's a very specific reason for that. That is because a lot of the things that we're going to do together, we're going to actually do them together, are going to involve us making calls and getting in touch with people that need to happen during the business day, right? So we need to be at a time here, at least Mountain Time, where we can get into business hours, and where, if we absolutely need to, we could even try to get in touch with someone during business hours on the East Coast, right? There's that 15-minute window until it hits 5 o'clock. So it gives us a little bit of leeway there as far as the business day. And so we're going to work with the company that owns the company that provides electricity for this area, and work with that foundation to attempt to get them to participate with Chip Drop, so that when they're out dealing with power lines and they're having to trim trees, whatever services they use, they can encourage or insist, whatever the case they might want to implement, if we can talk them into it, getting those tree trimming services to utilize chip drop rather than paying to go and waste space and nutrients in the landfills, right? In conjunction with that, we're also going to be approaching tree trimming businesses here in Tooele. And we can do that for those in your areas if you guys would like to do that. Again, that 15-minute window for the East Coast, but there will be an hour and 15 minutes for Central. And then the whole class, of course, will be fine for Central on down. We just, for those East Coast guys, right, Benny, if you're wanting to do this, hint, hint, this is you, right? And Georgia, I'm not sure for you, Kendez, but there's going to be that 1 15-minute window. We can even try to call 1 or 2 tree trimming services on the East Coast to try to showcase what it is that we want to do if we want to do something like this in our own communities, and to get the ball rolling for you guys wherever you are, right? Then this is something neat that came in the mail, and so I had to go and check it out, of course. The city of Tooele sent out this mailing, and it's like inked. Somebody hand wrote the address. I'm like, this might be something important. At first I was a little worried, but I opened it up, and it's this map, right? And I'm not going to make too big of a deal of it, but this area that's over here in this red zone is what they're going to be planning. And so then I went on to the city's website and looked into what this whole thing is about. And so this the department also serves as support staff for the Council of Governments, County Council, Planning Commission, Appeals Board, Improvement District, and Special Service District, right? So they're all working in conjunction to plan out this area that's right at the end of our neighborhood. And they're going to plan all of these different things. They have general plan amendments, rezone requests, subdivision, conditional uses, landfills, public assemblies, and professional filming. So they have all of these different categories, as well as the Special Service District. And I can't remember exactly where, not just here, but there was something else about this Special Service District. And that basically said that they're not going to give any overall designations. They can kind of zone it as needed without quite so much paperwork involved. And from my understanding, they'd always planned to put industrial down there. So if they want to change it from industrial to something not industrial, that only makes me happy. And hopefully they will have been talking about the plan that I offered them about putting a strip park along all of these properties. It looks like they're planning more like subdivisions than apartments or condos that we thought they might be putting on the other side, which is still great. It will raise our property values, but in order for our property values, now that we're the older subdivision, not to detract from theirs, that strip park would still be having that value. It would increase theirs, keep that little division between the newer and the older, and increase property values on both sides. Then they could put shops all along that stretch of residential buildings, right? Homes, perhaps some apartments and condos as well. And then next, put that strip of shopping to then separate it from the industrial, so that none of it's really this big negative impact on the homeowners and things like that, right? And we can keep it nice and not have the degradation that comes from that industrial zoning so often, no matter what part of the country you're in, right? And so I am actually going to try to take you guys, there'll be more special classes, but I'm going to try to go to some of these city and council planning events and start getting my voice in, finding out what they're really talking about, making sure I understand it correctly, talking you guys through it, right? I won't be able to in the moment. I'll have to get their permission to record it. I am allowed to record anything in the state of Utah as a conversation that I'm a part of, but if I don't actually stand up and speak, that law doesn't count. And it's also just kind of an important function that I wouldn't want to overstep my bounds, right? And so hopefully we'll be able to record the audio. Wouldn't want to record the video, just the audio. And then we'll be able to listen to that here in class and talk about that and make sure everybody fully understands what's going on, so that they too could go to their city or town council planning and their county council planning events and be better aware, better informed, more comfortable for having that experience and that understanding, right? And so those are just some of the pieces that we'll start working on here in Collectively Rewilding's new class. Oops, and I lowered that one down. The how-tos for community outreach. It's going to be a lot of fun, a totally different type of class, and I think that it's going to have a lot of value for all of us. So I definitely hope you guys can make it. I know it is earlier in the day. If any of you have trouble making it because it's earlier in the day, throw your questions out at me before the event, a day or so before the event, and then I will make sure to get them answered during that class. Or you can put them on the recording, put the minute marks. I'll jump right in there and make sure to answer your questions, right? So I think it's going to be a really, really neat thing. We'll definitely try to help Tammy figure out what to do about these crazy salt cedars. All right, guys, any other questions, thoughts before we jump into the calendar and just go over that one more time, what our next class will be coming up?
You said you had some plans for Wednesday?
Yes, we have an all-new class starting this Wednesday. How-tos for community outreach. And it doesn't always have to involve the garden, guys. If you have something going on in your community that you would like to approach in a similar outreach type of a fashion, we'll absolutely broaden our horizons. All right? It's going to be a lot of fun. How to reach our congressman, right? We talk about these things in Lesko Help too, but that's not our main focus. So while I have a ton of resources put together for you guys to do all of these kinds of activities, it's not something that I can bring you along with very often because that's not what Matthew Lesko's focus is. I tried it back in the day and he kind of shut all that down. So we're going to do that over here, right? At first I thought about doing it in Collectively Rewilding. Excuse me, that's a nice flip. I love that. I thought about doing it in Lesko Help too, but really back in the day when I was doing things like that, Matthew didn't really care for it. So I don't feel it's inappropriate to do it over here in Collectively Rewilding, right? Because I'm never trying to steal content or compete or approach the arenas that we touch in Lesko Help too. That's what we do there. This is what we do here. But he didn't really care for it, even though it connects with his work. So it absolutely connects with our work here as well, and we'll do that work here in Collectively Rewilding. All right, guys, really excited about that. Also excited about the chat. We're going to close the poll this Saturday, the 20th. So make sure to get in there and get your vote in. I'm really excited about it. We'll put that out the following week. So we've just got some new things continuing to roll out all of the time. When you ask the questions about Gardenary, Kendez, it made me think, and I forgot again, there's just so much going on. One of the things that I'm going to work on, and that Nicole Burke, who is Gardenary, does for her clients in Nashville, she has a calendar that she has ready for them to purchase, of course, or just show them, and maybe is a part of her package, right? She didn't go too in depth on this calendar. I just love calendars. And it's an actual calendar that says things on certain days of the year, has an overall theme, keeps you on track, and it's an actual calendar that you can hang on your wall. So we're going to do something like that for our community as well. Absolutely, that will go in conjunction with our hybrid garden planner and journal. And I would love suggestions, you guys, on a better name for that. It's just too big of a mouthful. That's maybe the first time I've said it comfortably when I've tried. The idea is that it's combining rewilding and modified traditional gardening, right? Bare row gardening for centuries, for millennia, has been the so-called traditional model for most of the world. There are some exceptions, places like the Andes and the with mountains, the Alps, and the rice paddies in Vietnam and areas like that. There's definitely some distinct areas, but the bare row gardening is kind of a global thought for thousands of years, and it's not very productive. I will generally focus on ancient methods before I will focus on modern methods. However, bare row gardening is bad Skittles. It's just not a good idea. It doesn't work. It's counterproductive. It's more work to ruin your soil. It's all of these things. But outside of that, And this is becoming more and more common in our culture and hopefully globally. You know, we know American culture, gardening is not something that we necessarily get to touch on a lot with other people. Of course, the goal would be here in Collectively Rewilding to broaden that as well. And I am working with some groups on Facebook that are international. Which is great when I get back into that and posting the Collectively Rewilding material back in those groups, right? I've got all these other projects, and so that one's kind of fallen by the wayside, but I want to wait until we're ready to fully launch, and then that will be a part of the marketing. And I have these groups that Collectively Rewilding's already had a presence in, and we'll be able to just introduce what we're doing, right? It won't be about a sales pitch. We just want them to come and join us for free in Collectively Rewilding. So it's a neat thing to be able to market, free thing. It's also sometimes negative. Sometimes people will pay less attention to something they have not paid for, right? So it's this delicate line that anybody that has a business is always walking. And so having that garden planner and of course the certification, and yes, Miss Tammy, I promise you, I will get the Master Garden certification as well, and it will back up what I'm doing in Gardenery, but I can't make money with that as easily. So I will probably do that as soon as I have gotten the Gardenery done. With that, we'll already be Collectively Rewilding moving ahead. And once I have started making some money from Gardenery, which I need to start doing in the next year to year and a quarter, that's my goal, then at that point, it will be so marvelous to go ahead and get that Master Garden certification that's specifically for Utah, and that also backs up the credentialing that I've acquired through a private brand and business, right? Not everybody's going to have heard of Gardenery. So while I will be able to show what that means, it doesn't automatically mean that I have a degree from an accredited college or university, which would be something that someone would just automatically understand what you mean by your paperwork, your certification, your degree, you know, whatever the case may be. So all of that's going to work together. Yes, please, Candace.
You think you have to finish the Gardenery program in order to, before you would be able to, say, feature her over here in Collective Rewilding and just collaborate?
Oh, no, you guys are going to hear about it as we go the whole time. Is that what you mean? As I'm working through this, I'll make it a small part of our content and we'll talk
Oh, no,
about it.
I'm talking about bringing her over here and have her platform, let them know that she's going to be talking over here. And then boom, you got 1 billion members now.
It would be amazing. And I am going to probably approach her, but she already has spent all of this money on this huge, very well done website that actually has broader potential than the limiting qualities. Mighty Networks is amazing, where we host Collectively Rewilding and Lesko Help Too and Quinby, right? But it's a platform and it's their platform, and what you can do with it is what you can do with it. When you have a website, the horizon is the limit, right? Only to what your imagination and your skill level are you limited when you build your own websites. And so that would be a kind of a hard sell, I think. There are some other people that I'm definitely going to try to bring over. She is already a global presence.
Mhm.
So,
Well, you'd be surprised, like people that, you know, are profit focused are always willing to expand their marketing and advertising.
absolutely. And so when I approach her, as well as some of the other people that are larger that I follow, there are smaller markets that are content creators that I'll approach first, right? And then if we get to a point where we are large enough to necessitate creating our own website, which would be about where actually Matthew Lesko sits with Lesko Help Too. He's consistently got about 25,000 members, but he doesn't really gain and he doesn't really lose. And I feel like maybe some of that's because it might be the time to start considering building his own website out, right? So I don't know that he'll ever consider that. But when we get to about that point with Collectively Rewilding, that'll be the time to say, look, we already have thousands of members over here. You're going to increase your audience by. We have all of these tools that we have set up for you to utilize. We're already featuring your content. You can take over that content and already have that and redo it and put it how you want it and take it out if you don't like it, et cetera, et cetera. But for the level that we're at now, with 160 people, while that's a huge success for what I'm building in the beginning part of that, she's already taught she's already certified and got businesses that have been involved for a couple of years or 5 years or longer that have taken this certification more than what we have members, right? So it's not a big enough market for her yet. But yes, absolutely. That's the big end picture goal, would be that anybody, no matter how large, I'm talking John Deere, right? So we would be like, okay, you can come and you can talk about things, but we are going to also talk about the fact that your bigger tractors do this and this and this. And we're going to be encouraging you to work towards lighter weight models, things that work with biodiversity, you know, that don't compact the soil, that don't tear up the plants completely. Then you have to think about things like, are we going to be hand pollinating things because we won't quit compacting the soil, John Deere? You know, like, would they even want to because of that? But I think that we will actually create a big enough market that they'll want to bring them more eco-friendly models in the larger scheme of things, right? But I will be very much like, if you come in, you have to keep it modeled towards ours, or we're going to specifically talk about the damage that your tractors are doing and ask you, why are we not hearing about equipment studies that you're doing and prototypes that you're building that are going to eliminate or at least help to mitigate some of these problems that your equipment does. So I think I got a little off topic there, but really there are a lot of companies out there that do a lot of great things that they can come in and they can start talking to our audience and offering lessons and courses and their own little certifications, like what Gardenary is, like what you see from the SBDC and the SBA. You know, they're not accredited institutions, but more and more, some of these certifications are really starting to matter, both to our audiences, to people that we want to hire us, to our ability to have a successful business. Does that answer kind of the whole picture view when you ask a question of that nature, Candace?
Mm-hmm. I was thinking more like a podcast.
Absolutely. And so that's what we're starting with, our Yarn Yard for Tall Tales. That's our first podcast. And so that's us branching out into that market, trying to get people who like to just listen to things. And we'll have additional pieces like that. I probably won't have another podcast, but perhaps Tammy would, because sometimes Tammy doesn't really want to share her screen of herself. And so if she started doing things like reading Ball Book, right, the Blue Ball Book, it's for canning. She could read articles about fermenting. She could read articles about dehydrating. She's already posting them. So if she wanted to do a podcast class, a podcast session, she could do that and not share her screen at any point during the entire session, not her video, not her screen, and simply create a podcast where she just reads this material that she's already got to know in order to get those 50 hours of volunteer time to acquire that food preservation certification, right? And so that's one of the big things that I really like to see incorporated into anybody that comes in and is making content in Collectively Rewilding, or they're bringing their brand in and that brand is making content and putting it in Collectively Rewilding. I would want to share the philosophy of make what you're doing in your life your content, right? Find a way to incorporate that into what you're doing. And that's kind of what you and I talked about last week a little bit in regards to the Gardenary certification, Candace, where you want to look at the places that you're already going to. Everybody at the grocery store has to pay taxes. Everybody at the library has to pay taxes. Everybody at the yoga club has to pay taxes. Everybody at the coffee club has to pay taxes. So you can look at those places that you frequent the most often and start with those as your readiest market when you're looking for new clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think we should all be doing. What in our lives do we like to do we want to do, that we're good at? Let's make that our business, or let's make that our paycheck job, or let's make that our content focus, right? Whatever the case is for each of us individually. What makes our lives better? That's what Collectively Rewilding is all about as well. It's about helping others to find comfort with the pieces that we've found for ourselves that are good for us, that are good for the environment, that are sustainable, that are healthy, right? All of these pieces, and share that with others so that they too, just like what we're going to create with our cigarettes, or I want to say with our quitting bad habits, right? Because I really want to include anybody that has something that they consider a bad habit. I don't want to just relegate it to just cigarettes. Certainly vaping, if you want to quit drinking, if you want to quit sitting around all the time, if you want to quit reading too much, right? That was my bad for my first 20 years of life, 25 or 6 or 7 years of my life. So whatever you consider your bad habits, come and quit with us, right? And so we're going to bring that into our lives, into our content, into our work life, as far as for me, with collectively rewilding, and also letting people know in Let's Go Help too that we have this quit group, that we have resources for them as Let's Go Help members, and that it doesn't really fit for us to have this group over there, but we have this additional support piece where we're going to quit these bad habits together as a community, as a group of people that enjoy interacting together, and our online friends and acquaintances and strangers, right? So that's something that I think we should all look at, because it's really harder and harder these days to find your happiness, to find your comfort zone, to find your community, all of these things. So one of the ways that collectively rewilding is a solution for me is getting to immerse myself in things that I feel are a solution for some of the problems that I see in the world. And I think that we can all find that place, even if it's a paycheck job. If we really look at what we like to do, what we're good at, and go and look at the world again with fresh eyes and think, what could I do that would make me happier on a day-to-day basis, and continue, be more sustainable for us each individually as our personal journeys, right? And so that's kind of part of what will be in the quitting bad habits group, as well as a bit built into that community outreach class, because when we're approaching our community with our thoughts and our ideas and our volunteer time and things like that, that's our goal, right? We want to find a better physical environment around ourselves. We want to see an improvement, or a park, or we want to see a community garden, or we want the education to be improved, or whatever it is that we personally are going to want to build our community outreach on. What is going to make us happier as individuals? And what part of that do we see that we think would also be something that a lot of other people would actually be happier if they were participating like that, right? We don't want to just go and be like, well, I really like the color pink, so I really think that everything in downtown should be pink. No, but like a community garden is more than just myself. Park is more than just myself. Zoning is the whole city, right? And so what parts of our physical environment do we want to see changes on, or do we like and want to see more of, or less of, or all of these beautiful pieces, right? And away from the political spectrum. When you're approaching your city and your town council, yes, of course, there is politics involved, and they may or may not probably likely have a political designation behind their name, an R, a D, or an I. However, it gets a lot less, sorry guys, the flies are just horrible. And I figured out why. It's because of the seaweed fertilizer that I let decompose outside, out the back door. The wasps, I thought, might like it because it smells like seafood almost. A little bit rough if you go breathing in heavy, but it's really the flies that love it. So anyway, how do we make our lives better? What solutions can we actually do with our own activities? What can we make better in our daily lives? What can we make better on our physical environment, whether it's a windowsill or a front yard or a community garden, or the overall way that the town works? So one of the things I want to talk to them about directly affects smog and things here in Tooele. Their light patterns are horrible, and they're still based on a weight system, so that the smallest streets stop traffic constantly without any flow, without any recognition of flow. And when you have that starting and stopping, not only does it make a huge mess of congestion and cause people to act irrationally and cause accidents, it increases the smog in a city. And so there's a way that you can time the lights, not use a measurement or a weight system, but you time them out for the busier parts of the day. Yes, go back to the measurement of weight in the evenings and in the nighttime. That's great. But when it's your busiest times, do it on a time so that as this light here is turning green and these cars are starting to move, then the next light is turning green and they're starting to move, and they're all going to hit that green light in a smooth motion and get through. Then you don't have the congestion and you don't have that smog buildup. Still letting those streets come through, and they know it's going to be on a certain amount of time, so they're not impatient. They're the smaller street. It works in big cities. It can work in Utah. I haven't seen it yet, but I want to introduce this thought to the Tooele City Council. And so those are the kinds of things I'm talking about. It doesn't always have to be a community garden or gardening in general. That's where my focus is, right? But when you guys look at your properties, at your apartments, at your towns, you know, how do you want to be involved? What kind of an impact do we want to have when it comes right down to it? What kind of a legacy do we want to leave? Do we want to have impacted our community in a positive way? Do we want to be a part of that? Do we want to just not harm it and keep to ourselves? You know, we each get to make our own decisions as to our level of involvement. But I feel that there are a lot of people who would be more involved than they currently are if they had a better set of tools to go out and do that involvement, right? Do you guys agree? Do you feel like talking to your senators, talking to your town councils, your city councils, is it a little bit unapproachable, and would working together and doing that and modeling it here in class help you for any times that you wanted to do something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? I know most of you are able to speak. Benny, how about, did Benny end up getting a chance to join us? Yes, he sure did. How about Mr. Benny? Any thoughts, really, guys? It's a big, big thing to me to show people that they do have the ability to affect their outer world, right? We can't affect Mongolia. We can't really affect the political decisions in Washington, D.C. We certainly can't affect China or Russia or England or any of these other countries, but we can have an effect in our communities. And if we care and we want to go further with that, impact in our communities can lead to a broader impact to our regions, to a media presence, to something that could be heard throughout the country and perhaps further, right? That all begins with the small steps of working in your physical environment, the one that you can reach out and touch, right? Both our own private parts of that, from apartments or even a room, right? Sometimes we rent rooms from people. I don't care what kind of a living situation you're in. And if you are without shelter, there's certainly resources for you that we can provide that will help you to feed yourselves and things like that, along with, of course, telling you should come and join us in Lesko Help too, because we have resources to help you get out of a homeless situation, right? Curtains that help keep warmth inside are usually called thermal curtains or insulated curtains. Thank you, Benny. Appreciate it. And Benny says, I feel that there are great things coming for all of us and others to help each other and the environment. I agree with you, Benny. And I really feel like more and more of us are trying to focus on that solution, like what we're talking about right now, rather than just focusing on the problem and blaming someone else for it. Oh, it's their side, their color is wrong. Oh, it's this religious philosophy. Oh, it's this country that did it wrong. It really, when it boils down to us on the ground, we don't have a lot of influence over that, but we can influence our immediate environment, and we can influence our communities. We can influence our families for healthier outcomes, right? So like just, we've talked about in here about Anita, my mom, being able to find a place on the property that my dad will comfortably leave alone because he likes an immaculate, like he doesn't want trees with leaves falling on the ground. He wants it like, if he could put concrete on all of it, I don't know that he wouldn't put concrete on all of it. And so that's a real discussion for my mother and father, to find an area that can just be wild with things like wildflowers. And so whether it's something like that or finding a space for Miss Charity, right? She is starting to open up her windows for herself. And so perhaps for her, it might be a good first step to get something like a snake plant or a fly trap, a Venus flytrap that doesn't take a ton of light, and start making yourself open up those windows just to let that light in for the plant. There is something out there for all of us that we can touch, that we can improve. daily, there's some small thing that we can do. And so that's why we can take this beautiful community that we have online where we interact and support and encourage each other. And then we can take those principles and we can apply them in our physical areas and move beyond that, no matter how we want to improve, increase, our lives. And that's what I want for all of us. And so that's what I do for myself with Collectively Rewilding. And I hope that that same energy and opportunity is presented to all of you, both here and that you find inside yourselves, because really it is about finding it inside ourselves, right? And so really quick, before we do jump into the calendar, we brought it up and I forgot, and I meant to talk to you guys about that tonight. With all of us that are doing this quitting group event, how do we want that to look? Do we want it to be a space? Do we want it to be a weekly event? Do we want it to be every other day? What kind of thoughts do you guys have around that so that it's a plan that I can keep working on? We'll release the new community outreach class this week. We'll release our new community chat next week. And then either the week after that or somewhere really close, we'll put out this new endeavor of quitting our bad habits together. And so what would be supportive to you? Would events be more supportive? Would resources, what would be the most supportive for all of you?
Threat of nuclear warfare.
Well, that's in to survive or not to survive. We have that one, Kinda.
Sabrina.
Yes.
Benny has a suggestion in the
I got
chat.
it. Thank you, Miss Ethel. Yes, a space. I agree, Benny. A space, I think, to me, and I want to hear you guys' thoughts on this, to me, without an event to back it up, we can absolutely talk about it at every event where it ends up coming up. That's not a problem. But without an event that's specifically geared towards supporting it, I feel like our efforts are going to fall a little bit slack. I also don't have a lot of time for classes, and YouTube loves short things as well as the long things that we're already putting out. So what I was really thinking is even maybe 5-minute daily check-ins, or every other or every third day 10 or 15-minute check-ins, at least a weekly check-in. But it doesn't have to be this long class like what these are. A quick one just to say, hey, this is what I've accomplished, this is where I struggled, this is the new technique I found that I like, things like that, right? Almost like our QAA, right? So we're quitting everything that we don't like. And so it's our QA. It's not a Q&A, it's our QA. Habit Anonymous, right? There we go. So it's our Habit Anonymous meeting. It's also, in my ideas, when you want to stop a habit that you don't find healthy, the best success method to put in conjunction with that many times is to replace it with a healthy habit, right? And so
Always.
So those are the kinds of thoughts that I have around this, right? So knowing that, hearing that, Kendez, I don't think that you smoke cigarettes or any of that kind of junk. Is that right? Along with Miss Ethel and my mother and
I vape.
You vape?
I smoke occasionally. I don't have no vape.
I'm sorry, you're being real quiet because you're probably like being a little bit hesitant and unlike your normal style. Could you say it again for us?
I say I smoke every now and then, when I don't vape.
When you don't vape. Okay. So are you interested in joining our group? Is that something that you think would be good to stop spending money in health on?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Benny said he sees what we're talking about, that events would probably be good. So with that in mind, what do you guys think? Every other day, every other week, once a week, every third day, just some little blips. That's why I'm saying we could really do it like daily if we wanted to. I think that's a little much to start off with, but we could start off with like every third day it wouldn't quite work out because you have to plan the events by the day of the week, right? But we could put out one on, what was I thinking? I was thinking Monday, that's rough for a lot of people. Wednesdays can be a little bit downhearted. We still have 2 more days to go, right? Then Fridays are kind of tough because you want to have fun, and sometimes you think of fun as those bad habits, right? And
Sabrina,
then I thought maybe Sunday, like a reflection, just a quick, like, how well did it go over the week before we get to the new week?
Sabrina,
Yes.
you had stated that we're doing something on Wednesdays, and every other week we could do something. Could that not be the every other week?
No, it's every week. The community outreach will be every week. So
Okay, so in
yeah.
the community outreach, could that be a part of the outreach, or we going to be doing
No, I think it
something?
only has a half an hour. We're getting really crunched for time between the 2 communities.
Uh-huh.
And so I
Okay.
believe that I only scheduled this one for a half an hour. Let's double check though, because it's still
Okay.
brand new to me too, right? Yes. And it's a weird one. It's 2:45 to 3:15 to squish in with enough time between the other class that happens before in LH2 and after in LH2.
Right.
And
Right.
so
So-
this one's going to be kind of like a wham bam, hear what we're talking about, ask them a question or two, maybe even think ahead and put your questions in the chat so they're already there and ready. And I don't even have to ask, so I can rock them out and we can go on and let the class and Lesko help you.
Right.
So not a bad idea, but no, it won't really work like that. And for me, I feel like more often is better in this sense, not longer, more often. So I'm thinking like 10-minute sessions, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. Does anybody else like that? Any other like more specific thoughts, right? Like Ethel's was great. It really was, but it doesn't quite work. Of course, for those that are joining, you don't have to come to every one of those, but if you're struggling or if you're encouraged and you've done well and you want to share it, they would be there for you, right? Benny did a thumbs up. Any other thoughts? All right, I'm guessing that's probably too much for everybody. And I understand that and I hear that. So come when you're wanting to come. We'll put it out. I will put out at least 2, maybe all 4 of those. We'll see how it goes. We can always cancel some, add some in, whatever ends up working out better, but we have to quit. Like, we have to quit. I'm not going to let my husband die in his 40s or early 50s because we refuse to give up this nasty smelling, nasty tasting, expensive, wrinkle causing, teeth staining dust stick. We're not going to do it. So we have to quit. And I would love to be there for any of you at any point if you want to quit these bad habits as well, whatever they are, right? All right, guys. So speaking of how-tos, community outreach, Miss Ethel, we will start that in just a couple of days. This Wednesday, September 17th, will be our first how-tos community outreach, and that will be at 1:45 p.m. Pacific, 2:45 p.m. Mountain, 3:45 p.m. Central, and 4:45 p.m. Eastern. And yes, if you guys are interested, try to get there as quick as possible because it is that quick in and out, get the lesson, get the experience, get back to the other classes that have been there for a longer period of time, right? But I do think it'll be a lot of fun. Hope to see you all there and keep an eye out. Get your vote in before the 20th and look for that new community chat space as well as the events to start rolling out. We'll probably start with one event for the Quit Bad Habits group. I think I'm going to call it a group because a group just feels like solidarity more than a space. Of course, it's a space. That's what these are in Collectively Rewilding in any Mighty Network under a collection, but we're going to call it a group and we'll get some really good title for it. And we won't release more than one event per week so that it's all just kind of a gradual thing, not a pressure thing. That's the whole goal. It's not about pressure. It's not about judgment. It's about opportunity and support and encouragement, as well as resources, right? Both resources to back up what we're doing and resources that show the damage that we're doing to our bodies and to our pocketbooks and to all of these different things, right? Even sometimes I think about all of the fields that could be in food for people that don't have food, and instead they're in Nicotiana. So that's not a great thing. And you don't want to compost You don't want to put it in your compost pile, your cigarette butts and things like that. Certainly not a vape stick or a filter cartridge, any of these kinds of things, right? So it's utilizing resources and not able to even put it back, and it's killing us, and it's costing us a lot of money to do these things. So definitely come join me and my husband and the whole group of us that have talked about this and quit whatever your bad habit is. It doesn't have to be smoking, doesn't have to be vaping, doesn't have to be any of the normal bad habits. Like I said, my worst habit that was the hardest for me to break in my life was reading at least 7 full novels a week. And it hurt, folks. It hurt to quit that habit. Okay. It really doesn't hurt as bad to give up a cigarette as it did to give up a book. So come in, join us, we'll have fun, lots of resources, lots of encouragement and support to get this done.
You
Hope to
said Wednesday, right?
The Quit Smoke group we haven't put in yet. I'm thinking we'll start one. What day would you guys like the first event to start on for the Quit Smoking, Quit Bad Habits group? Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Sunday? Just shout it out or put it in the chat, whatever.
Sunday.
Sunday? Monday? What was it, Kenda?
Sunday.
Sunday? All right. Anyone else? Going once. Going twice. Sunday sold. Okay, so we'll have our first one on Sunday, and I may go ahead and just release it. Vanessa, it sounds like you're really ready for it. So maybe we need to get that one out there just a little bit quicker and get that started. Get those resources out there in your hands, get that community feeling, get that group going, get that event to look forward to know that you're going to have that community support and engagement for. Okay. All right, guys. Wonderful. Well, I definitely hope to see you Wednesday and at all these new fun upcoming things, as well as the in-between classes in our other community. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Please feel free to unmute and say goodnight, everyone.
Good
Good night, everybody.
I knew you were going to do that, Jeremy. I swear to God, I'm like, somebody's going to come on and say, good night, everyone. That's hilarious. Enjoy your week, everyone. Thank you all so much.
Peace.
Bye, guys.